Thank you, Mr. President.
There's one or two places we're a little ragged. I thought we might almost think about doing them over. One is Saigon.
I'm sorry, sir.
3.5 years? Yeah, 2.5.
Well, that doesn't matter.
One is, we're a little sort of general about South Vietnam. I don't know whether you can improve it a little. I hadn't heard what President Truman said either. What was that?
He said he's opposed to a tax cut until you get the budget done. You want to do that one over?
I think maybe South Vietnam was a little more verbose than it needed to be.
Do you recall
your question?
Which? I see. I said first one was, do we tend to get locked into a policy and find it difficult to...
Maybe that was the part that I didn't quite get onto.
Another part I asked was, are we late in recognizing the true nature of the Siem regime?
Yeah, those are both questions that I don't think they're rather difficult.
Will we reduce may we reduce our aid, I asked. And then...
No, that's all right. I think what I said on that was all right. I think it was those other two. I don't know.
Also, why don't we use more influence in Sankey? More if we have influence, why don't we use more?
Yeah. You asked three somewhat difficult questions about South Vietnam, and the result was that I'm afraid my answers were awfully...
We want to do them again?
Let's take them again.
Okay, let's try it, do it again, and we'll see what it comes out this time. I'm surprised at Truman. My God. They get him on those morning walks. And... I went into it a little at the end, even though I wasn't responding, because I don't think I'd put enough in as to why we wanted the tax cut. So,
want to take that?
Really no, but it was really in response to another question of yours. I don't know whether we can tag it on to, if you want to decide in cutting it.
Something. Hubert was talking the other day in the Senate, and he said what the people in this country believe is perhaps more important, believe is true, is perhaps more important than what is true. Is it becoming apparent that the idea of deficits cannot, we're not recording them, cannot be sold to the American people?
I think it's damn difficult. I think we just have to...
You think it's impossible to sell it to them?
Well, God, we've been trying, and he told Truman, who wants to be helpful and is helpful in every chance he gets. When I just think of that British experience, of course, it's fantastic what they were able to do. Without, I mean, there were objections to them for not doing enough. Why everybody thinks that recession and unemployment, which is next year, I don't say you can keep, by next April, this will be the longest peacetime recovery since the longest economic period of economic expansion since the Civil War. So, I mean, you're bound to have the dip down. You know?
The British...
Well, since...
quick, immediate.
So, in answer to your question, I don't think, you know, maybe you have to go through one more hard experience.
Let me ask you that this time, all right? And maybe we should say what Truman said, because a lot of people will not have heard. All right. Anytime you're ready. Yeah.
I'll take these on South Vietnam, then, if you want to pick up the... Mr. President, in respect to our difficulties in South Vietnam, could it be that our government tends occasionally to get locked into a policy or an attitude, and then finds it difficult to alter or shift that policy?
Yes, that's true. I think in the case of South Vietnam, we've been dealing with a government which is in control, has been in control for 10 years. In addition, we have felt for the last 2 years that the struggle against the communists was going better. Since June, however, the difficulties with the Buddhists, we've been concerned about a deterioration, particularly in the Saigon area, which hasn't been felt greatly in the outlying areas, but may spread. So we're faced with the problem of wanting to protect the area against the communists. On the other hand, we have to deal with the governments there. That produces a kind of ambivalence in our efforts, which expose us to some criticism. We are using our influence to persuade the government there to take those steps which will win back support. That takes some time, and we must be patient. We must persist.
Are we likely to reduce our aid to South Vietnam?
I don't think we think that that would be helpful at this time. If you reduce your aid, it's possible you could have some effect upon the government structure there. On the other hand, you might have a situation which could bring about a collapse. Strongly in our mind is what happened in the case of China at the end of World War II, where China was lost, weak government became increasingly unable to control events. We don't want that. On the other hand, we don't want a dictatorship that alienates people by its very repressions. So I think it's going to take some time before we bring an improvement in the Saigon area, or before the government improves its policies and its relations with the countries around the world. but I'm not sure it can't be done. In fact, I think it can be done.
Mr. President, has our government been late or tardy in recognizing the true nature of the Diem government?
There's been some difference of view. On the one hand, as I say, Diem has been in control for 10 years. Number two, there has been a better military result in the last 2 years. That's been on the encouraging side. Internally, however, there's been some, particularly the last 2 months, degree of concern, so that it's not a black and white situation. It's a matter which we have to work with. This is also true in South Korea. It's true in other governments around the world, in Latin America. We have to work through the people that are there, through the governmental structure that is there. We can't bring about overnight changes. They won't accept them and probably be unwise. The United States can't write the bill for every country. But I think we can use our influence, but I think we have to recognize that it takes some time.
We don't want to get into the business of knocking over and building other governments.
We want to, particularly, we want to influence events which will bring success. Now, that's been done in some cases. And as I say, we have reason to be encouraged, ultimately, about South Vietnam. What has concerned us, however, is the course that events have taken in the last weeks. We're trying to change that course to the degree that we can from 10,000 miles away.
Mr. President, Harry Truman was out for his walk this morning, and he said he did not think we should have a tax cut until we get the budget balanced. And the other day, Senator Humphrey was saying in the Senate that what the American people think is true is very often more important than what actually is true. In view of all that, what do you think about cutting taxes while the budget is still in deficit?
The reason the government's in deficit is because you've got more than 4 million people unemployed. And because for the last 5 years, you've had rather a sluggish growth, much slower than any other Western country. I'm in favor of a tax cut because I'm concerned that if we don't get the tax cut, that we're going to have an increase in unemployment and that we may move into a period of economic downturn. We had a recession in '58, recession in 1960. We've done pretty well since then, but we still have over 4 million unemployed. And I think this tax cut can give the stimulus to our economy over the next 2 or 3 years. I think it will provide for greater national wealth. I think it will reduce unemployment. I think it will strengthen our gold position. So I think that the proposal we've made is responsible and in the best interest of the country.
Economic response to Britain's tax cut seemed to be almost immediate. Would it be as immediate in this country, do you think?
I think it would be. Interestingly enough, the British came forward with their tax cut in April, passed it within a month. They're experiencing the economic benefits for it. Unemployment's been substantially reduced. They have a larger deficit than we do. Yet the only criticism was that it wasn't enough. Nearly every economist has supported that. I think that it's in the best economic interest of the country, unless this country just wants to drag along, have 5 or 6 million people unemployed, have profits reduced, have economic prospects, have our budget unbalanced by a much larger proportion. The largest unbalanced budget in the history of this country was in 1958 because of the recession, $12.5 billion. The fact of the matter is, of course, government expenditures do go up in every administration, but the country's wealth goes up. President Eisenhower spent $185 billion more than President Truman. But the country was much wealthier. It's much wealthier now than it was in the last year of President Eisenhower's administration. I think our economic situation can be very good. I think what we've proposed is a responsible answer to a problem which has been part of our economic life for 5 or 6 years, and that is slack, failure to grow sufficiently, relatively high unemployment. And if you put that together with the fact that we have to find 35,000 new jobs a week, I think the situation in this country calls for a tax reduction this year.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't know. They're going to have to cut that a little around because we covered about that. But you're up to that. Is that going to be tough, a half hour a day?
No, I don't think so.
What about your other show?
Isn't really that much more
Do you
time?
need the
15
President?
minutes is so damn little that a half hour isn't that much more.
How about your other?
I've had to
Sure.
drop that.
Oh, yeah.
I can't do that. It's just too much work.
We don't need the President for that question. Oh, all right, I can ask. Mr. President, it has been said by some that this office, President of the United States, is almost unmanageable. How do you feel about it after 2.5 years?
You want
No, you just wanted my question.
Why don't we try? I tell you what, because I covered some of that tax thing and I think the British thing in my answer to that question, I'll just do another answer here.
Good.
I think probably then
Fine.
we won't I can just start in.
Taylor and Cutter will be at the play.
I think that the problems which affect this country sometimes seem almost unmanageable, and I suppose they finally end up here in the White House, whether it's the efforts we should make to maintain our rate of economic growth, deal with our gold, influence events in Saigon, the Congo, or in Latin America. I think that it means that the life of almost every American as a citizen is almost unmanageable. But this is a assignment and a responsibility which we've taken on domestically and abroad, and this has been particularly intensified since the end of World War II. On the whole, I think this country has done an outstanding job. A good many countries today are free that would not be free. Communism's gains since 1945, in spite of chaos and poverty, have been limited, and I think that the balance of power still rests with the West, and I think it can increase our strength if we make the right decisions this year, economically here at home and in the field of foreign policy. And two matters that we've been talking about are examples of that. One is the tax cut, which affects our economic growth, which affects the whole movement of this country internally, the test ban treaty, which affects our security abroad and our leadership. That's why I think it's very important that the Senate pass it. You know, the old story that who prepares for battle if the trumpet blows an uncertain sound. Well, I think that if the United States Senate rejected that treaty after the government has committed itself to it, the sound from the United States around the world would be very uncertain.
I haven't seen it. She saw it. Is it good?